The next selection that we will discuss is the domestic problems of King George. The domestic problems of King George is formerly titled as Gabriel and awarded as the second placer for a one-act play in the English in the 2006 Palanca Awards. The author of the drama is Joaquim Emilio V. Antonio, or better known as Joem Antonio. He is a teacher by profession, a writer on occasion, a scholar by passion, and a writing teacher by vocation. The domestic problem of King George is all about her daughter who can have a lover because she is no damsel in distress.
Good day, everyone. I am Nicole Frankie, and today I'll be discussing the plot. So, the plot deliberately talks about the different attempts made by the main characters, namely King George, the Queen, and also the Witch. At the beginning, it almost seemed impossible to marry off Gabrielle, the daughter of King George. She is the princess. However, a witch suddenly appears to the setting and offers different strategies to marry off the princess. So, King George and the Queen were both hesitant at first, but given the authenticity of the witch, they agreed that they must do as the witch says. So there were three suggestions made by the witch. First was similar to Cinderella's story, whereas a glass slipper would be used to lure a prince. Second plan was to prick the princess's finger, like the story of Sleeping Beauty. And lastly is to trap the princess in a tower guarded by an ogre or a dragon, like the princess in Shrek. She was, I think, Princess Fiona. All of these plans involved the princess to be a damsel in distress, which wasn't her true nature. Gabrielle was actually sophisticated, very much independent, and was also very smart and skilled. As the plot continues, the plan all failed. Gabrielle was too good and too much to handle. All the princes that were lured to the castle walked away for the reason that Gabriel wasn't frankly in distress, meaning they wouldn't be viewed as a heroic man, which was the which was actually what they wanted. At the near end, the last prince arrives to see if Gabriel was really distressed. However, the queen says that she's not. So Gabriel alone was able to defeat the last plan of the witch. Gabriel suddenly shows up and questions the prince's presence in the castle, making them battle. A prince versus a princess. So the prince seemed to like Gabrielle and was actually different from others. He grew fond of her just by that significant instance. So Gabrielle and the last prince were a match made in heaven, or should I say, a match made by a witch. Thank you.
Now, let's proceed to the characters of the story. The story only contains 9 characters, so let's get to know them. King George is the father of Princess Gabrielle and husband of Queen Gretel. He is a concerned and loving father to his daughter, and so he worries about finding a prince for his daughter to wed. Queen Gretel, the wife of King George and the mother of Princess Gabrielle, she's a sweet mother who would always protect her daughter. And just like the king, she wants to find a suitor for their daughter. The king and queen, from the start, keep on saying that their daughter doesn't have a problem. But they are actually acting problematic about her because of the idea that she might not get a husband. Dolly the witch. The funny thing about this character is that she verified herself as a legit witch with a license. She knows the problem of the king, and she said that matchmaking is her sideline. The elf is the character that runs errands for the witch. The witch asks for something to him, he does it. Prince Jack was a failed match who, from the start, was eager in saving the princess. But the thing is, the princess doesn't need saving. Finding a glass slipper is boring for him, so he was disappointed. Prince Junior III was also a failed match. He also didn't buy the princess got a prick with a poisoned needle thing, so she needs a true love's kiss. Prince Cuddles IV is an ogre, the meanest, the greenest, and the biggest ogre in the land. He was described as a beast that is heavily armored and bound in chains. Prince Jock, without a title, was an unexpectedly successful match, because when he came, he was ready to beat the ogre, but the princess did it herself. She beat the ogre herself, and because of that, he fought with the princess. He ends up being stunned and amused with her because she's not ordinary, and he finds her better than most of the people that he knows. Lastly, the main character, Princess Gabriel. She's the daughter of King George and Queen Gretel. She's no ordinary princess, unlike those damsels in distress.
Hello everyone, I will discuss the thought and diction of the domestic problem of King George that was formerly titled as Gabriel. Thought. The thought of the play is the freedom and gender inequality. But first, I will discuss the freedom. Freedom. The story tells the readers that women do not have the freedom to do what they want to do. It can be reflected in the character of Princess Gabriel in the story, who has certain limitations because of her mother. But it was indirectly observable in the story that the princess has the audacity to do what she thinks she wants to do. Princess Gabrielle didn't have the freedom to choose her own lover at the beginning of the story. Her love life was interfered with her parents without her knowing. This was a stigma since the former in women part of cultural practices, where women's freedom to choose and decide were deprived. Furthermore, she was reminded by her mother, Queen Gretel, on how she acted and behaved in the story that deprived her freedom to act. However, it can be seen in the story that Princess Gabrielle did not let anyone to meddle and control her decisions on how she handled herself with her love life and how she must behave, disregarding society's standards for women. This thought falls in the main concept of the story, which is gender inequality. Gender inequality. Society has assigned certain roles for women in how to act and behave, and Princess Gabrielle's manners and attributes to the story represent gender inequality because of the gender role, which is the main concept of the story. Princesses are defined as women who are modest and weak, based on society. In the story, Princess Gabrielle has the attributes that women, according to society, should not have because it is only meant for men and not for women, because women must be modest and weak. In one part of the story, it can be seen in the dialogue of Prince Jack when he says to Princess Gabrielle that she should let herself be rescued by him. But the princess afterwards offers swordplay instead to the prince. The story teaches us that women have the capacity as well to do men's activities and that there's no gender in any of the roles. Furthermore, another example that shows how society views women's role can be reflected to Princess Gabrielle's mother. In this story, Queen Gretel and King George discussed about the princess attributes that she took from her father and how she sometimes behaved that was out of the character for being a modest woman. Indeed, Queen Gretel had reminded her daughter about her manners, which were unacceptable for the society. Another discussion is about the diction. The dictions used in the story were easy to comprehend. The behaviors of the characters were shown clearly and effectively through the words used in the story. Moreover, the words utilized in the story highlight the main thought or theme of the story. For example, when Princess Gabrielle says, "I'm not good at sewing and cooking," symbolizing women's role or duty in household chores. There are different language styles used in the play as well. These are the consultative style, the casual style, and the formal language style. The consultative style was when the Highnesses talked to Dolly the witch. Casual style was when the king and queen were talking to each other, and the formal language style was when Prince Jack and Prince Junior III talked to the king and queen to show respect, formality, and authority. These language styles can be reflected through the use of dictions in the story.
Good day. I am Maria Joyce Navales and I will discuss the music and spectacle of the play entitled The Domestic Problems of Good King George. Music. The music added a level of suspense and beauty to the overall impact of the play. It helped to emphasize the emotions, feelings, and thoughts of the characters and made the character express their roles. Through the music employed, the characters were able to express themselves more, and the audience were able to connect to the story of the play. Spectacle. The utilization of props and costumes is in accordance with our concept of fairy tales. This involves the characters' costumes such as royals, witch, and elf. The glass slipper, poison apple, and sword are some of the props that add to the play's overall impact. The costumes were suitable for the characters and story. Furthermore, the created environment enhanced the atmosphere on the stage.
Let us now discuss the aside in the drama. So the characters in the drama The Domestic Problem of King George makes a remark that permits the readers and viewers to break the fourth wall between the fictional and real words. We all know that an effective aside heightens a story dramatic irony. The disparity between what the audience know and what the other characters know creates tension, which adds to the suspense of the drama. Characters are frequently established as dishonest by asides. Even if they are forthcoming with the audience, they are likely not acting honestly with other characters. So some characters in the play make unseen asides to other characters that are only heard by the intended receiver and the audience. These asides make it clear who is on whose side and who can be trusted or not. Let's discuss the soliloquy in the drama. Let me read the passage. That, however, is another matter. The urgent matter at hand right now, forthwith, is finding a prince for our daughter to wed. Of course, we could still hope for a prince disguised as a commoner, but in that case, how would we know that the prince disguised as a commoner is really a prince disguised as a commoner instead of a prince disguised as a commoner? I think I'm complicating things. This is an example of a soliloquy, as seen in a play in which the king communicates his thoughts or feelings loudly while the other actors remain silent on the stage. A soliloquy's objective is to express to the viewers a character's innermost thoughts. Because the audience cannot read a character's mind, this is the only way to depict an internal conflict that the characters is going through.
Next is the monologue. Monologue allows the character to address other character present in the scene. Monologue also is an extended speech by one person. So we have here three examples of monologues. So the first monologue from King George. That, however, is another matter. The urgent matter at hand, right now, forthwith, is finding a prince to our daughter to wed. Of course, we could still hope for a prince disguised as a commoner, but in that case, how would we know that the prince disguised as a commoner is really the prince disguised as a commoner, instead of a commoner disguised as a prince disguised as a commoner? I think I'm complicating things. Gretel, I was talking to myself. The bottom line is that we are having problem of marrying off our daughter. So here, King George is thinking when they will find a prince for their daughter. He is stressing himself. He and the queen are excited to their daughter finally find her prince. Another monologue is from the witch. Well, no. Although it may work, I had to come up with something that had to involve a kiss, as kisses are so romantic at all. The best thing that I could come up with is that the chemical reaction of spittle to the potion. But that would be a scientific if I were to explain to you all the jargon involved. The point is that the prince will have to kiss the princess to revive her. The catch, of course, is considering the need of spittle, not just any kiss will do. So here, the witch is, it is about the one of the plans of the witch, for them to be able to find the true prince they are looking for, since one of her plans had been failed. The last monologue is from the prince. Never fear, your highnesses. I will just do what it takes to put her in her place. And once I beat her, I will be known as the one who beat the biggest, meanest ogre who had already beaten 100 others. So that prince is the prince who won against Princess Gabriel. He has been able to prove himself to everyone, especially to the king and the queen. Next is dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when the characters do not know but the audience does. It is used to create tension and suspense. So the dramatic irony in the play is when the witch send out a glass of slipper to a prince and tell him that whoever fits it is the woman he is going to marry. So the king and queen agreed with it, and through the elf, the slipper was sent out to Charming's kingdom. The audience knew that it was just one piece of slipper, that there is no pair of it. And this was the way to the prince to go to their castle. That scene is before the first prince enters the play.
The Domestic Problems of Good King George, or also known as Gabriel, is a classical one-act play that entails 7 scenes. Scene 1: the king enters shouting the name of the queen. The queen enters annoyed and complaining about the king's disturbance, speaking up on how embarrassing he was for causing a ruckus for the neighbors. The king defends himself, saying they are in the center of the castle. No one would hear them even if he shouts through his lungs. The queen denied it and told him it was just an expression for his ruckus. The king now narrated what he'd been through knocking on every castle he found. It turns out he was looking for a prince to marry off her daughter Gabrielle, but it was just difficult to find the right one who would accept her. Scene 2: they continued to argue and wondered why they couldn't get any suitors for their daughter. They blamed each other for their daughter's lack of refinement, until the king realizes the reason her daughter couldn't get a suitor is because of a fad going on in their kingdom and the other neighboring kingdoms. A nobleman's fad. The eligible young bachelors nowadays go and look for some quest to find a wife. They look for someone in grave danger or something. They say that it is a sort of formula for that happily ever after effect. And that's when the king thought that the nobles wouldn't look at her daughter because she is perfectly safe in their arms. He thought of a plan that was disagreed by the queen. Scene 3: the witch enters stating that she heard about the problem of the couple. The two didn't welcome her openly for being unfamiliar. She introduced herself as Dolly the witch. They seemed to hate an uninvited guest entering their castle, so they called for the guards to get her out. But suddenly the queen changed her mind, telling her servants to tend her while while she gets refreshments. The witch eyed her suspiciously. They finally signaled to each other and did something to the witch and then confirmed that she really is a witch. They asked for the guards. The witch firmly told them that she already mentioned she's a witch earlier and showed her license and means no harm. She gave them her card with wedding enchantments, trinkets, and charms written. She was a matchmaker. They can't do evil things now, so this is her new business. She offered to make their daughter flocking with suitors. Scene 4: she gave the rules that she just doesn't match mix, but marry off princesses and princes. She explained that they send off princes into a quest while sending princesses into peril. At first they are in between, but finally come off with an agreement. The witch calls for the elf. The elf enters with the glass slippers on the princess' eyes and leaves after giving the other pair of the glass slippers. The queen complimented the elf for being cute. The king asked how long it would take for the prince to arrive. The witch responded that it could take hours, days, weeks, or even months. The two explained that it was too long to wait, but the witch stated that sometimes they also encounter potential rivals. The king seems thrilled, but the queen doesn't like the idea. Scene 5: A long silence dominated the castle when the prince arrived. He excitedly asked about the damsel in distress, but he was disappointed to know how simple the quest is, so he just acceded with a discontented look. The elf enters and does a quick dance routine and exceeds. The king and queen are impatient. Finally, the witch offered the poisoned apple package, picturing a true love kiss. But they didn't like it, so they came to the decision of using a poisoned needle package. The prince arrived with the news, but hearing the details, the prince also left disappointedly. Now Prince 2 enters. There seems to be a deja vu because their dialects and actions are the same of what happened to the first prince. But unlike the first one, he seems to like the quest as if it was not dangerous. But they heard a loud scream and the prince went down with his head through his shield. He also left with like the other one. Now they changed their plan. They went to extremes like with dragons and ogres. The witch asked for the elf to fetch Prince Cuddles the Fourth, a real beast. Scene 6. Prince Cuddles the Fourth went straight towards the Princess Gabrielle. A roar ensues, then a scream. Princess Cuddles the Fourth armor flies out, and then his club, and then a whimper is heard, scuffles, silence. Princess Cuddles the Fourth comes back with a sheet of paper. He maintains unusual composure. Without a word, he hands it to the witch, which takes the note and reads it. Prince Cuddles the Fourth falls. On his back is a sign. Elf picks up the sign and shows it to everyone. Property of Princess Gabrielle. Elf drags Prince Cuddles the Fourth out. He filed for assignation. They thought their daughter was an Amazon. When finally they are about to give up, the prince entered. The first one, Prince Jack. Scene 7. He stated about hearing the news that the princess was kidnapped by an ogre. But the queen explained there is a problem. The ogre was beaten. The prince tried to show off his title by saying the ogre should battle him instead, but was cut off by the princess herself, who he called a fiend, stating she defeated the ogre. The prince was stunned. He stated that the princess was like a man when she talked, and the king, queen, and the witch agreed. The prince and princess fought and decided to battle each other with swords to prove who's stronger. The princess came back with the sword and fought with the prince. While fighting, the prince asked the princess random questions and had taken a liking to the princess' response. They are equally matched and no one likes to lose. The witch called for the elf, and when the princess eyed the elf, she became her target for pricking her earlier with a poisoned needle. Heard about the witch and sudden He heard about the witch and suddenly became her target. The prince also set his target to the two, making them argue about it again. Now the elf runs away and the princess asks the prince to chase after it. After that, they both each ran after the witch. Now the queen and king realized that they finally found the prince's match. In this literature, I found no fourth wall. Fourth wall or breaking wall is a space between the audience and the actors on the stage. The characters include their audience to the play, like they would suddenly address the audience directly. There is no fourth wall in the domestic problems of Good King George, or also known as Gabriel, because the dialogues and scenes are only directed to the main characters, and the author may not want to interrupt the reality of the story. Only few literature uses fourth wall on their plays, that's why.
Theater spaces. The theater used in the play is the black box theater. The domestic problems of King George plays in a simple performance space. The theater is a large rectangular or square room with black walls and a flat floor.
Good day, everyone. This is Dasri Mayor, and now let's have the last part of our report, which is the literary merits. So, first, the drama, the domestic problem of King George is universal because it raises our awareness about gender stereotyping, gender inequalities, and it tells us that everyone has the freedom to choose. So in the drama, the queen mentioned some of the main characters' attitude that is not expected or good to see in a lady, and that shows that there is a gender stereotyping and gender inequalities in the story. And also it reminded us that we are all free and have the freedom to choose. Next is artistry. The choice of word of the author is direct and easy to understand, and he talks about the important matter through a humorous dialogues, making the drama light, fun, and more meaningful. The last one is intellectual value. The domestic problem of King George escalate our emotion and interest through raising our awareness that gender inequality, stereotyping shouldn't be normalized or tolerated anymore because we are already in the modern world. And regarding with our freedom to choose, yes, we are all free to act, but always be mindful of our actions because just like the saying, we are the captain of our soul. Hence, we are the one who should take control of our life and be accountable with our actions. And that's it with our report about the domestic problem of King George. I hope you have gained something from us. Thank you.